our calls.
I was going to say good morning, Greg, but I don't think that's going to work. It's afternoon, and it's been afternoon a while.
Greg, how's back to
Good
school?
afternoon.
How's it been going back to school for you, Greg?
And I think
You froze. You froze
And
on us.
my computer says, oh, okay, never mind. Not muted.
I think you were frozen on us, Greg. Try it.
yeah, I'm getting a message that my internet is unstable, but good afternoon. Hopefully I don't freeze up too much here.
And Senator Southworth, if you don't mind, I'll just go ahead and get started. And as more people join us, they can kind of just chime in because I know your time is limited. And
Sure.
we sure do.
Yeah, I've got you till my next Zoom's at 4:30, so take off.
All right. All right. Well, we'll talk fast. And I know there's a lot more that we could tell you than what we can cover in 30 minutes. And you may have some questions as well. So I definitely want to leave some time for that. I'm going to make some really broad statements and ask that if you hear something that seems a little far-fetched or you don't just take, I know it's a lot to just take my word for some of the things that I'm going to tell you. So if you hear something and you think that can't possibly be right, please don't write it off. Please ask us to provide evidence. Is that a fair request?
That's exactly how I do things.
Okay, good. Because what we're going to tell you is going to be quite alarming, and every time I tell this story to people, it takes them several times to process it, and then they come back for more, and they come back for more. So luckily, we're on a 10-day veto period, and maybe by the time session resumes on the 29th and 30th, we might be able to show you some things that could even change how you vote on particular legislation. Is that a possibility? Is that a possibility you're willing to consider?
Well, I guess I'm always open to considering things on legislation. So I don't know what all we're going to talk about here, but we're good.
All right. Well, I reached out to you because I have been watching the testimonies and the committee meetings, as well as your floor, how you explain your vote. And I appreciate how you explain your vote pretty much every time. And I don't always agree with you, but at least I hear where you're coming from, and it gives me an opportunity to think about what might you not know, what may be different in Jefferson County than it is in other places, that we want to make sure that we still achieve the goal of the legislation that's been proposed without harming unintended consequences, or sometimes I feel like intended consequences when it comes to Jefferson County. There's a lot of stereotypes and misinformation, and so we are real Louisville parents, teachers, taxpayers, and voters, and our voices have been shut out. And so what you're hearing when you hear the testimonies from allied, quote unquote, allied groups, oftentimes they're not accurate. They're not the full truth. And Greg is one of the teachers in Jefferson County. He ran for JCTA office recently because the teachers feel like the union leadership is not reflecting all of their concerns accurately. And in particular, the union president has been the president for 20 years. And after taking that seat, he removed term limits. He changed the number of years. So he's been there for 20 years when that wasn't the way it was before he came in. So in the meantime, the pension has become went from 93% funded down to 53% funded. And that's on a good day. And this is the teachers' money, and they don't get Social Security. And this is not a partisan issue. It's been underfunded both sides, and really it shouldn't be about who to blame and passing the buck and still not doing the right thing. We should be taking care of our obligations to teachers' pensions. So that is one bill that we have particular concern about, is because we fought to prevent a pension reform bill from going through. We had sick outs. Jefferson County teachers in particular really showed up and made it clear, as did our voters, and we saw sea changes at the school board level. Back in 2016, we got rid of some of the local business leaders that have been trying to infiltrate and access our public schools. So there's the mayor, there's business leaders, there's Humana interests. David Jones in particular was our school board chair. We got rid of him. We were able to get rid of a superintendent that had been put there by outside interests that were, again, not looking out for what was best for our students. And so we've been cleaning house, and we've been doing a pretty good job at the local level of getting rid of some of these characters, but it's a Goliath, it's definitely a David versus Goliath fight. And it would really be helpful, even if there's nothing we can do about this particular legislative session, because it's just so big and so fast moving. And if you could even help us look for ways to bring reform to, for example, at the district level, we saw these elections that I mentioned where Greg was one of the ones who ran for office. The ballot is controlled, the software is controlled by the incumbent party. So that's another thing too, is at the end of the day, they say, these are the results. And we say, okay, I guess that seems legit. We have no real way of knowing it. And then on top of that, they restrict communication channels. They determine what the rules are as they're going so that they can position themselves in more favorable ways while their opponents.
Sounds like a political party.
It is. It's and I know that's how it goes, but the people who have all the power tend to change the rules so they can stay in power. And I think that's what we're seeing in Frankfurt this past couple of weeks as well. I feel like this is a big power grab with transparency being restricted, and the Pension Oversight Committee in particular is one that I'm concerned about, because they seem to want to be able to get their friends on these committees and then remove all transparency and remove how people can keep an eye on whether or not the pensions are being managed honestly. And there's been ties to Blackstone in particular, is the largest asset manager in the state of Kentucky. Actually, I think it's the largest vendor in the state of Kentucky, and they happen to be the retirement asset manager. And their CEO, Schwarzman, was one of the largest donors to Trump and to the insurrection. There were ties to the insurrection in our nation's capital back to our asset manager CEO. So these are alarming things that feel like Jefferson County local leaders may be, this is the alarming part, so get ready, may be involved in a similar scheme like we saw with Bop Trot. And you mentioned Bop Trot on the floor, and that's another reason why I want to reach out to you, because that's before my time. I moved to Louisville in 2012, but I was reading about it, and it's fascinating. And I know they're smarter now than they were back then. So if they're doing the things that they did back then, they're not going to get caught the same way. But they still shouldn't be doing it. We have to figure out ways to prevent them from being able to do this. And one of the most egregious things that I noticed is just during the House and Senate committee testimonies, the fabrications that took place. I feel like if you can't lie in a courtroom, you shouldn't be able to lie in a House and Senate testimony. And so I feel like there should be some kind of consequence, for example, if you get caught lying, because they're making laws and decisions based on the information that's been presented to them. And if someone knowingly is providing false information that affects the outcome, I think that should carry some kind of consequence. And right now it carries none. And I can probably, depending on how much time you want to follow up with me and commit to what I'm bringing to you, because I've been documenting. I'm a very good documenter, and I've been documenting and archiving and putting it back out there for others to see. But unfortunately, we get buried and trampled every time we start to get onto something. So, but I can document actual lies that were told. Not only by people like local leaders, but also by lawmakers who are sponsoring and supporting these bills. And there's about 10 folks that repeatedly commit those same types of problematic behaviors. And so, it's not everyone. And I would think we would want to not allow that to happen in our Commonwealth, and we would rather see that eradicated as opposed to turning our backs on it. And that's one of the reasons I reached out to you, is I just got the sense from the things that I heard you say and do that was kind of where you were coming at a lot of this too. And Greg, feel free to add on or correct or anything that I've said so far.
You know, we need help with getting public schools where they need to be. We've got a population in Louisville that is different than most of the counties in the state. And so it's tough for counties in the state to have an idea of what the specific problems are here in Louisville. And it's easy for people to make a sale to promote something that's not going to be the best thing for all of us. And really, I'm concerned about, you know, state decision-making to override local decision-making as well. I think that's one clearly troubling trend we saw coming out of Frankfurt this year. So I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're listening. And I hope we can find a way to all get together on the same team on around education in Louisville is what I'm passionate about.
So as an example, vouchers, House Bill 563 is another bill that we would like to see if you would reconsider your vote. And I heard in your testimony, one of the things that you were disappointed in, which is what we're disappointed in, is that it is not treating all counties the same. And again, Jefferson County doesn't want vouchers. We have a few lawmakers that, like I said, there's a small handful that feel like they're not working with us, but actually undermining us. And but for the most part, Jefferson County does not want vouchers, and yet this is targeting us. This bill is specifically targeting us, and it's lawmakers outside of Jefferson County that are kind of imposing it on us, and that's not how it should be. If anything, lawmakers should be voting for it because it's what we want and we need. If it's going to target us in particular, otherwise it's punishing us, right? Like saying we know better than you about what you need, and therefore we're going to give you something even though it's not what you want. And we need more local control. For example, site-based decision-making councils were part of CARA when education reform happened 30 some odd years ago. And a lot of that has been eroded. And in fact, our most struggling schools lost their site-based decision-making council power like a decade or more ago. So bringing back that local control and moving back in that direction would be a better strategy than moving away like we keep doing. We keep moving away and saying, we're going to carve out more taxpayer dollars and give it to this entity. We're going to carve out taxpayer dollars. But the more we give it away to other entities, the less accountability I have to call my board member and say, I need you to fix this. This is a problem. This is a pattern, et cetera. We can't vote them in and out because it's been delegated too far away. And so, again, just bringing back that local control is one of the things we've been fighting for a while. But even our PTA got hijacked, if you will, by outside interests. And so for the last decade, we've been fighting just to get our own parents elected into our PTAs again. And it's either the principal at the school level recruiting someone to serve and push out parents, which is crazy, or at the district level, it's been the same 6 people that just kept rotating in and out of seats. They did extend term limits some, but not remove them completely. Instead, they just kept trading seats. But it was still the same 6 people going district to state. And then even at the local PTA, when a PTA would collapse, they'd go down there and take all the money and decide how to spend it. And it's just been really unfortunate. So we're trying to get our feet back under us at the grassroots level, and raising some awareness and helping us put some protocols in place. Like I spoke at a board meeting 2 years ago after the PTA thing happened, because I read to them how the district has the ability to put additional controls in place for outside organizations, but it doesn't seem like the district is really interested in doing that, because I think that they're part of the bigger power play that is making sure that the adults are all getting what they need without putting students' interests first. And we want to flip that script. So longer term, that's the kind of relationship I'm looking for, is maybe somebody outside of Jefferson County, because the favors and the good old boy network and all of that is really pretty heavy duty here too. So
I think local boards getting control of their schools districts is huge because there is so much. I mean, we have elected, and I think if you were watching till all night, maybe you ran across this comment at some point if you're watching all the time. But I went off on this, I think it was Monday or Tuesday maybe, about our local boards of education. They seem like they always have the thumb on them, and it's like they can't do stuff for the schools. We elect them to essentially be the head of running the schools, and yet they've got 300 layers on top of them that they can't actually do what most boards run corporations or whatever they are, right? So what I'm trying to figure out is, what is that balance? I have this big gigantic question mark out there. I mean, we obviously have a state board and we have local boards, but local boards are elected. State board is not. State board does have some rule making / regulatory compliance side of things to make sure everybody is in line, because of things like the Constitution that says we have to have education be baseline equal everywhere. So you need to have some kind of state entity out there. We can't just free market it where the local board can do anything. But at the same time, that's like why we have a General Assembly that sets the baseline. You know, here's what we need to do. The Kentucky Board of Education should be implementing and making sure that all the counties are at least reaching those goalposts. But then what's their other function? Perhaps the other function of the state board is to be kind of the glue or the administrative assistance or something to local boards. So every local board doesn't have to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
You know, here's the wheel, you can just use it. And so, but I'm trying to figure out, you know, where it turns into that the board doesn't have any control over its own school district. It turns into, whether it's the site-based council, as you mentioned, load the site-based council with all the teachers and not enough parents. And then I really want to hear more about this PTA thing, because that is, I have to say, I've actually wondered if PTA even exists anymore. I haven't heard someone talk about a viable PTA since I was in elementary school, I don't think. So I'd really like to know more, because my whole thing is local boards are elected to run schools, but the number one, I mean, if you want to talk about site-based council, to me, it ought to be like parents. More parents, I mean, you got to have some professional input to some degree, but to me, the schools need to work for the kids, not the other way around.
Right.
Can I add one thing too, as far as an issue that I didn't mention that ties in with what you just said, Senator Southworth? I'm very concerned about the statewide legislation that says requires an armed uniform officer in every school when funds become available, which is a kind of a dangerous little thing in itself. But I was part of the Police Free School campaign that worked and came to board meetings and spoke for years to in support of ending our contracts with police. And I'm very concerned with the implications of that state law that requires it for everything, and how that supersedes a clear local decision we've made here.
Right. When they can make the choice to do that at their district level, the only reason they made that law was to force us to do that. Like, it was directed at us again, instead of letting us make our own decisions based on what we know we need.
You know, I hadn't really thought about whether that would be one of those things that falls under, I don't think that falls under constitutional common schools requirements. So I think that's something you probably could say could be a local thing. The only thing I would say then on the other hand is everybody's saying, I mean, yeah, don't get me started on this topic, but we're started on it, you know, between the school shootings and all this other stuff, they don't want to have, you know, one school hanging out there as put a target on their back and say, here's the school you should send your shooters to. So we're like, well, let's try to put something out there that puts something that's baseline equal across everything. school. I don't think it's a constitutional issue with school education stuff. I've heard from a lot of people, one guy I know, not in Jefferson County, but who is the officer, he's like retired Fish and Wildlife. He serves as the officer at the school. And I know, at least when I was a kid, we always had the DARE officer came in. And one of the big things a lot of people talk about is building more of a community with law enforcement, between law enforcement and general community, like goodwill type things. And so he said it's been really awesome because, you know, it's kind of building that goodwill. He's somebody that kids that have no home, you know, kids have no dad, those kind of kids look up to him. It's like having a coach or anybody else that's an adult figure in the school, but it is an officer to where they can help build the goodwill and good sense with law enforcement, trying to build trust, and that not everybody is those weird bad stories, you know.
Right.
So I can like see that that's really cool. Although then again, I'm also on the other side of, well, I don't really want to turn schools into prisons, but you know, so
Right. So
That's one of those sales that's easy to make too. And yeah, I mean, I understand where you're coming from. I've worked in buildings with SROs. They didn't do much, but they were just, it was an elementary school, so the kids could go play basketball with them. And I don't deny that builds some community with the police, but at the same time, if schools are saying they don't want that, and if families and children are saying they don't want that, I think the law as we have it is very intrusive.
So one of the things that I, as a white mother, have had to kind of pay attention to and learn to understand a little bit better is, first of all, our district is less than 50% white. So we are a majority district. And seeing an armed police officer in a school can actually be traumatic for our families of color because they've experienced harm by armed police officers. And right now, with everything going on with the Breonna Taylor situation and the Explorer case and just all kinds of corruption within our LMPD and our police union, that needs to get put into check first before we can ask our school to just trust letting armed police officers back in. If you can understand what I'm saying, it's rather.
yes. And I would point out, I mean, I know it comes a stereotype, but I really try to stay away from the stereotype of people of color are the ones who are more scared of the police, because frankly, it's the people who've had a bad incident.
Absolutely.
Now, granted, we have a percentage of incidents higher with relating to people of color, but that's not really the issue because a lot of people of color are officers, right? So I really would say it's those people have had those scary situations.
Yes.
I don't know the percentages, but I know the people that I'm sitting over here. I don't really mind an armed officer as long as he doesn't have a bad body language, because there's some real jerks out there that I can't handle. You know?
I mean, when my son, the first time I sent my son to a school that had an armed police officer, I was like, oh, that's interesting. You know, it's a bigger school and we're in a bigger city now. I get it. But it didn't alarm me. And it wasn't until my other son went to Shawnee, which was probably 70 or 80% non-white. And other mothers would tell me, I don't feel safe sending my child to school with an armed police officer because I don't know that they're not going to interpret something that they're doing as, you know, a harmful act, because we have data that shows that our students are disciplined and suspended 5 times more frequently than their white peers for the same activities. So the data shows that we have a bias that we need to address. And until then, you know, that's rampant in our police department. That's rampant in our public schools. And so we're just not in a place yet. Hopefully someday we can be, but we need accountability, which brings me to the Civilian Review Board discussion. And Greg is also a board member on the Kentucky Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression, as am I. And that organization was instrumental in the creation of the first civilian review back in like 2000, I think, maybe even longer. Greg, how long ago was the first one? Do you remember?
It was older than that, I want to say, but no, I don't have an exact date.
I think I heard somebody say 30 years, right? So maybe the 90s. But we needed accountability of our police department back then, and civilian oversight was how we wanted to go about it. And the founders of the organization that we're involved in were instrumental in that. And here we are 30 years later, repeating ourselves, needing that type of oversight again. And what you heard, again, the lies that are being told in these testimonies are outrageous. And I'm sitting here knowing the inside baseball, just watching them tell stories on each other, and it's quite disconcerting. But
were you watching the committee hearing, the very last one we had on Tuesday? And I was like, I mean,
where
clearly
there's
the mayor marketing going on.
Was that the one with the mayor? He referenced the mayor, that one?
Well, we had one on Monday and we had one on Tuesday. Yeah. So I don't know. But anyway, my comment was, I am like not normally going to vote for things I don't agree with, but my gracious, I'm voting for this to get this thing out of here. So you all get into a free comments committee, get the Jefferson County legislators together and tell me what in the world is going on, because I'm just hearing a whole bunch of lines spewed out and I can't even make up or down on what's going on.
Is they're lying, but they're still not telling neither one of them is telling our truth. And so our truth is still not even presented. And that's the thing that's so frustrating, is it's really a power grab between two different sets of liars, you know, and the truth is still down here.
Well, that's typically the case, and that I guess that's what I was trying to get to the bottom of, and I couldn't figure it out. So I was like,
well, I'll tell you, we are so frustrated with our police because they can't police themselves that we have a need for a civilian review. And in order to do so, we need,
I think that's undisputed. Now, right. The rest of it.
Well, but in order to do so, we need subpoena power. And you can hear the mayor trying to keep subpoena power over under his mafia group. And then you can hear, you know, everybody wants their own little power. And Jason Nemus and Brent McKim and Dr. Polio are all making backroom deals and getting each other. Like Dr. Polio got Senate Bill 250 so he could have more power. When he took power away from SBDM, just in Jefferson County, Julie Rocky Adams sponsored the bill. Julie's been endorsed by JCTA. Jason Nemus has been endorsed by JCTA. Jason Nemus's wife just got a choice teaching job and bypassed 7 more qualified candidates in JCPS. How does that happen? How does that happen? So they're doing things to benefit each other while the kids and taxpayers suffer. And so none of what you're hearing is really true. Our Metro Council passed the Civilian Review Board with the subpoena power request in the policy 25-1. It's what we want. Jerry Miller is an ex-Metro Council member who is a voice of one, who's trying to pretend like he's in the majority, and they're trying to discredit the civilian review panel that was put together by our people. That's our panel. I wasn't 100% excited about everyone they picked. We had some people that we nominated, but we accepted the process. We accept that committee. And for them to now say they're going to try to get rid of 3 of them because of things they said on social media, no, the reason they said the things they said on social media is because our police department is corrupt and something must be done. We're trying to fix it from within. We're trying to do the work that needs to be done, and our hands continue to get tied. So I appreciate that you were asking those questions, and I don't know how to get the answers to the people that are making the decisions. That's, you know, you're one person, and they'll still tell you something else even when, you know, because they're good at it. They're gaslighters. They're professionals. They're magicians.
Yes, but at least when we see a magic show, we know it's a magic show.
Yeah, right. Anyway, I know you've got another appointment. Randy Week is on the call. I just want him to introduce himself to you. Randy, say hello.
Hi, Randy.
Hi, Adrienne. Nice
Randy
to meet you.
Has run to try to replace Brent McKim. He ran 6 years ago for president. He ran this year for treasurer. They did everything they could to discredit us, to prevent, you know, when I say us, I was out there amplifying them. I'm just a parent, but, you know, they would question, who am I to have an opinion about all this? Well, I have an opinion because they keep pushing out parents from these organizations because they have the money and power and platform to do so. And so, you know, and I see them having effect on policy decisions and how taxpayer money is spent and the safety of our children. I mean, these are all things that affect the parents and teachers, rank and file teachers should weigh in on, and they're being cut out at every turn. So, and Randy also filed lawsuits against the pension managers. He had 3 separate lawsuits to try to get them to do the right thing. Like we've been trying. They're just so
Nice.
powerful. Help us, please help us.
Well, I will say in closing, what I mentioned earlier, it sounds like, I mean, we still need to figure out what the answer is. What is, if you were going to just start your own school and your own planet, what would that hierarchy look like? I think we have to have a state board of education, a state something of education to maintain the constitutionality and making sure that everybody is some, you know, common, equal, whatever definition of all that is. And then you have to have local control, which I love the elected board model. But then after that, then what? I'm not sure if site-based councils, like how all this works and who chooses who and how you keep out the corruption, but also keep continuity to where there's consensus and there's not just catfight circuses.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
to me, if we don't have the org chart down, then we can't go anywhere.
Right. Well,
And
Jason, sorry, go ahead.
well, just, and like I said, and you have to have the balance between the parents' input and then, you know, the schools being directed by the board who is elected, and then taking into account the will of the parents and, you know, not just turning it into a political deal.
Right. Well, and JCPS is a district of choice already, so the disparities occur naturally if you don't put certain boundaries in place, and we've eliminated pretty much all the boundaries. It's almost kind of a free-for-all. Anybody with money and power gets into the good schools and everybody else gets what's left over, and then everybody ignores the schools that are left over, so there's no advocacy on behalf of those schools that have high concentrations of poverty. And
the other thing on Jefferson County, I found out that we don't have any schools in certain areas of the West End. And right. I have a real problem with that because every other person has a school that is considered like their neighborhood school, right?
Yes. We're fixing that at the grassroots level, though. Like, that's actually something that we had to start by getting rid of board members, getting rid of a superintendent. We now have a student assignment plan that's been proposed. They just did a tax increase so they can build the schools in the West End. That's been our platform. That's the voice. Cool. Those are the voices that they're squishing, but that's what we've been demanding, and we're getting it. It's just a lot slower than it should.
Well, I know building a whole bunch of schools is not a fast or easy process, right. But that to me is huge, because if you don't even have a school, I mean, not to mention a choice of a separate school, but if you don't even have a starting point, then no wonder we have a gap.
Right. We have to build more schools before we can cut back on the number of students that are bused across town. And we need to make those schools so attractive that families want to be bused into that part of town. So we get diversity because people are going both directions. We've been busing kids out and no one's been coming back. And that's how I got involved. Is my son actually went to the academy at Shawnee in West Louisville, and we lived out east, but he went there because of the magnet program. And he's now a Marine pilot in the United States Marine Corps. He went to the Naval Academy and he got a nuclear engineering degree. He's a failing school graduate. So I call BS on all the stuff, because it's not the failing, it's not the schools, it's my privilege, it's my advocacy, it's my ability to make sure he's getting in the courses that he needs and that he's fed every day and that, you know, he has a roof over his head and all of those things. So let's make sure that we have a student assignment plan that's equitable, and that we take away the incentives for adults to game the system. And the high stakes testing in a district of choice is one of our biggest flaws, because schools like Shawnee get compared to schools like Manual, where Randy teaches, and Manual gets to choose their students and we don't. So we're always considered a failing school, and we're always cut, you know.
Yeah, the whole assessment thing, don't get me started on that either, because that stresses kids out and doesn't do anything to help education.
Right. So I've got so much more that I would love to share with you. I've put together a little PowerPoint. If you've got like 10 seconds, I'll show you what it looks like.
Sure. And you can maybe email me at also.
Yes. I just want to show you this fight. I was going to try and share my screen, but I'm not seeing the bar. Okay, hold on here.
Thanks for bringing up the test, because I can't believe we're pushing forward with that. That's,
Is that for sure happening, Greg? Did they say?
I have not heard anything differently. I've heard that they're calling for the bare minimum, but it's a state call.
Well, and there's an opt-out bill that maybe we could still get passed. There's still 2 days to get the opt-out bill. So
I
parents,
thought that, well, I don't know what, I thought KDE had some kind of thing already worked in, but.
I don't think so. I think
Okay.
last time I read something, they're not even allowed to refuse it. Okay, so like vouchers. I want to show you this, Senator Southworth. Mayor Fisher's dad is set up to benefit from school choice scholarships, which is a company that will administer the voucher money once that goes into place. And he's been doing that since 1998, I think that says. Gary Houchins, Christopher Derry, who is Matt Bevan's business partner, Jim Waters. They started an organization called BIPS back in 2003. Kathy Gornick, who was also one of the school board members that was confirmed in 2019. Like they've been infiltrating since, look, 2005 is when Gornick was trying to get into our school board. Hal Heiner, Wayne Lewis, all of these folks have been listed on these other Secretary of State businesses trying to find ways. Phil Moffitt, Milton Seymour was an interim board member. They've been working together trying to find backdoor ways into our funds. And our own senator in 2019, Julie Rocky Adams, had a chance to vote against Gary Houchins. She was the swing vote. And even though she was endorsed by JCTA, she still put Gary Houchins' confirmation through. And so I documented that. Like I actually put together like a 1-hour documentary on that because it was fascinating when I went back and watched how she left the room and they passed over her name and her vote wasn't counted. And so, I mean, I'll send you all this stuff if you really are interested. I'd like to see some kind of investigation. The people that are doing things that I think they shouldn't be doing, I think should be looked into. And I don't know, I don't think it's right that we just keep turning our backs. These are all the lobbyists that were part of the, again, we could have stopped Ed Choice, and we did stop Ed Choice and vouchers in 2019. And if it weren't for Brent McKim distracting teachers away from what was happening, we were trying to stand at the bottom of the Senate stairs and talk to senators as they went up. And that's the video I'll send you. But they held an event on the other side of the Capitol grounds so that nobody would be there. It was as if they were trying to detract from the fact that she was about to confirm him. Like, we had 3 endorsed House reps vote in favor of this voucher bill, earlier this week. And 2 years ago, Julie Rocky Adams could have stopped it and didn't. And she's JCTA endorsed. They're not on our side. They pretend to be on our side, and they're really good at the storytelling. But I mean, they've been working together behind the scenes for a long time. And that's what I just wanted you to see is all this. I put this together a couple of years ago, but I've been updating it since it just happened to us again. And I just can't believe it. During a pandemic, when the public can't access their lawmakers and teachers are trying to teach virtually and in person and deal with everything going on, they can't show up in Frankfurt. And then, committee substitutes that nobody's read. If they were truly doing what they should be doing, they wouldn't have to do it this way. And so I would like to really just ask you to consider not overriding the veto of House Bill 563 and the pension bill. Just give JCPS another chance, because we should have won this a couple of years ago. And let's get a bill that works for everyone, not just one that targets JCPS.
I have to say, I know there are some people that were saying they were targeting JCPS, and I'm not 100% all up to speed on everything going on in JCPS, but for me, it was trying to balance all the pieces. And like I said, bills weren't amazing to me. Sometimes if the bill's not amazing, I vote no because it needs to just disappear. And other times there's a balance of more harm than good, and the good will end up being able to overcome the harm. So that was actually the situation for me on both of these, 258 and 563. I would be a lot more hesitant on 563 if it weren't the year that everybody is getting all of the federal funds that are going to help fill in holes, so that, I mean, we're not actually really digging into the state budget like you normally would be. And in fact, I think there's a lot of promise. I don't think it's well set up, but the only way these people do anything is when they have a deadline. And so I figured out, okay, if we actually put in a half-baked idea, then they figure out really fast, oh no, it's half-baked after the fact.
Right.
And that forces them into the meetings to get their act together. And I hate to say that's what it's going to take, but seriously, that's what it was going to take. And I was like, I think we need to do something here. And nobody's going to do it, like you said, the right way. And they're going to do last second committee subs. And I've got to get it out of these people's hands. So anyway, there I go.
Everyone truly was here for the right reasons and truly committed to doing the right things, I think it would work out that way. But
yeah, I know, right? That's always a thing.
Somebody comes in and figures out a way to make it work better for them, and in the meantime, we're still not at the table. Like the authentic grassroots stakeholders, parents, taxpayers, and rank and file teachers have not been at the table for years. And every time we find a way, find a path, they shut it down. They're mean, they're bullies, and it is structural racism. Race is behind a lot of what we see when the barriers are thrown up, when the walls are thrown up. And so you know, we're making some real progress, and I agree deadlines do help get them off their duff, but you know, they're also slippery, and they manage to change jobs and get out of that job right when it's time to be held accountable, and the problems continue, or they settle out of court with somebody and sweep it under the rug, but the structural piece still exists. And so another thing that I would like to see come out of Frankfurt perhaps is no cover-ups when there are settlements. Like there should be no non-disclosure agreements with settlements. People need to know what's going on. And you know, here we are moving away from transparency when we should be increasing it.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
Guys, I thank you so much for grabbing me. And of course, we have probably 3 million more things to talk about. But I will be back in touch. I'm trying to get my schedule together. Next week, I'm going to work on my schedule for April, May, and June and set out a skeleton. And one of those things is going to be figuring out what all I'm going to do study-wise on education policy reform this summer. So you'll
we would love to
certainly
be a part of that.
Yeah, exactly. I'd certainly add you to my list of contacts for that. So
Thank you for your time.
well, thanks a ton. Good to meet all three of you. And
Nice to meet you.
I will. Well, you know how to find me, so you get in touch with me, and I'll be in touch with you. And send me this PowerPoint too.
I will. I sure will. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Thanks a ton. We'll see you guys later.
Bye-bye. You guys want to stick around for a second?
Yeah,
Yeah,
let me
sure.
give me 2 quick seconds. Go ahead without me.
Okay. What do you think, Randy?
She seems like a decent sort. I just think she's new to
Yes, she is
Frankfurt.
conservative also. She's a Republican.
Yeah, so she's pressured by her caucus.
Perhaps. She seems to be pretty independent, which is why I reached out to her. I really like what she says when she explains her vote.
I'm not sure how she voted on the pension reform bill. I haven't looked at the board. But I did, at certain points, tweet her and, urge her not to vote for House Bill 228, or 258, excuse me, 258,
Right.
which ended up, passed last week by the Senate. And I guess at the last minute in the night there, Jerry Miller pushed it through. So I don't know how she voted, but I imagine she voted for that because it was, 23 to 13 or something like that,
Yep.
that thing passed. So I'm not sure she quite understands what that does long term to the Kentucky teacher pension.
No, I'm sure of it. I'm sure of it. I'll send her some links. Maybe something will speak to her. Do you remember Bob Trot?
Of course, yeah.
Tell us what you remember. Greg, you don't remember?
No, I don't.
Let's
These
hear it.
senators were selling their votes for, what was it, $50, $100? And the federal government came down on them. This was back in 1980, if I'm not mistaken. It was early 80s.
I think it was
And
92, actually. I was looking at it.
was it 92?
That's what I had.
And I think they nailed a bunch of them. I'm not sure what their penalties were, if any of them went to prison, but I think that they were convicted at least, of this.
It was the next to the last day of the end of session too. So I'm like, let's get another Bob Trot. Let's have him come in and take everybody's records during the last day of session. That'd be fun.
Where is Senator Southwick from?
Frankfurt. Here, this says September 23rd, 1990 was when the phone call was made. But it was 92 when they came in the middle of session. There, March 30th, 1992.
I was out of the country at that point,
Were you?
92. But I had heard of Bob Trot and how the feds came in.
Well, I think what they're doing now is bigger than that. I think this is intertwined with everything. I think this is about McConnell's succession plan all the way down to
Voter suppression.
and keeping people dumb and establishing their dynasty. It's a regime. They're establishing a regime right now.
Right. They can't win on the issues.
Huh?
They cannot win on the issues.
Right. And they have to pass it in the dark of night in the shady ways that they do, and then waste our resources, waste all our money suing them in court for their unconstitutionality of it all. Greg, did you hear what I was saying about Jason Nemes's wife? Did you see that?
Oh, yes, around the job position, ESI, was it?
They bypassed 6 other and held that position open for her until her certification came through, and then they gave it to her. That's in exchange for what? Like, shame on them. I've texted it to Marty. He hasn't answered me yet. I said, do you approve of this?
Well, Randy, were you at the PR meeting Monday? We definitely heard from Nemus supporters made their presence felt at the meeting anyways.
How so?
A lot of Brent, a lot of why we need him, why he's so critical. He's going to help us get rid of a questionable amendment to a bill for us, and
Hey, how about
shout out for why we're so diverse and we've got a variety of political perspectives within JCTA and JCTA leadership. It was I definitely felt it was the like a flyby, Republican flyby of sorts at the meeting.
I mean, why not just focus on getting your endorsed candidates to vote with public education on the governor's vetoes, huh? Why are we not focusing on that? We could stop 563 if you do that, Brent.
It was, yep, controlled. I mean, there's not a whole lot of input from the those that aren't already on the agenda as speakers at those meetings. I'm just learning.
At the PR meetings?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the organization is sick.
All right. Well, Randy, you've agreed to come out to Frankfurt on the 29th and 30th. Is that right? Spring break?
I don't think I can do both days. There have to be other teachers.
Okay.
I've been fighting this so long. If the teachers don't turn out, I can come down for a day, and if I have a bullhorn or something like that, I can say a few things. But no, I'm not going to do 2 days unless there's a show of strength and support
All right. So you'll
by
come the first day.
hundreds of teachers. I mean, the thing is that they're going to push these bills through, whether Bashir vetoes them or not.
I
They're
just don't.
bad bills.
I just don't understand why we're not trying. Like, we should show up in Frankfurt. The groups that want to fight to stop this should show up in Frankfurt those last 2 days. Why aren't they? Why is 120 already thrown in the towel?
I don't know. This is also the association. Have you noticed that Steve Neal has been popping up and saying a few things? Have you noticed that on Facebook?
I saw one. I hadn't seen many, but I saw one.
Well, he's popped up like 3 times.
All right.
And, he's retired and he's out of the game. But the thing is that I think he sees just how bad the situation is, and it troubles him.
Good.
Well, he's 80 years old, I think. So, I mean, the man is long retired, but I think the thing is that the association is not doing its job as it has not been for the past 15 years. And who's listening? Besides you.
I mean, I don't know how to describe it. Like,
Where's
I just,
120? Where's Defend Public Education? Where's JCTA? Where's Eddie Campbell and KEA? Why not have a car caravan with people honking their horns? A couple of people on the steps of the Capitol, distanced socially, with a bullhorn and signs? Nobody's doing that.
well, we're doing it, but they're not going to get on board with us because it's us.
Well, it's not being done by the organizations that are supposed to defend the benefits of teachers. And the teachers just frankly don't give a shit.
So
I'm
maybe,
sorry to say that.
I know, maybe,
After all these years, the teachers don't give a shit. That's the basic problem here. And they keep electing these scoundrels. Of course, the JCTA has those elections that are impossible to get beyond the propaganda of the current leadership. So, I don't know what else you can do at this stage when you've got these Republican majorities if the teachers do not stand up, which they do not.
I hear you. Greg, what about you? What are you doing during spring break? Did I already ask you?
That is spring break week for me. Yeah. I think I can do, no, it's not. Yeah, it is. Monday, I can get down there. Let's see how that goes. And I've got an appointment or 2 in the afternoon on Tuesday, but let's see how things roll.
So what are we up to now? 2 people?
No, I probably,
If nothing else, just speaking to legislators.
yes. But I've probably got about 10 people on the list so far, Randy. But then again, people do bail, so 10 turns out to be 2 sometimes. Everybody thinks the other one's going to do it, and then they don't show up. So Nicole Finley is coordinating the people that'll be on the terrace with me. I've reserved it from 9 a.m. until 2 p.m. and then I've got a barbecue truck coming for lunch. So
For whom? Not the legislators.
huh?
Don't supply the legislators with lunch. Is that what you're thinking?
Yes.
Oh, why? What have they done for us?
We're asking them to do something for us.
They're not. No. They're only going to react to force and noise and numbers. I don't think, well, look, I'm not knocking your idea, Gay. It's
It'll
just,
be for us. We got to eat too, so it'll be.
okay, all right, all right,
And you know
for us.
what? If anybody, can we buy their vote?
We
Yeah, I
can't
don't think
compete
a
with-
barbecue sandwich is going to put it over the edge. I kind of agree with Randy. We shouldn't offer
All right,
to
then it'll be for us.
legislators.
I thought we were supposed to be an angry mob, essentially.
I don't know.
Because of,
I went Friday and just stood there as they walked in and had conversations with them. I wasn't an angry mob. I was a respectful, concerned
we're
parent.
beyond respect. They passed a voucher bill, a fucking voucher bill. And they've also kneecapped the state pension system. This is beyond. Here is a barbecue sandwich.
All
Would you
right,
mind? You know what I'm saying?
all right. Come on, Randy. Let's get some people fired up then, because right now
I'm
all I
not
do is
fired up. I have given up. The
get
teachers
people.
in this state don't give a shit, Gay. They would have been down there in numbers. They've got nobody to lead them. The associations are not. We are, shoestring organizations, and we're fighting this monster organization of corruption down there. I've been at this for 8 years, and damn, what does it matter? I mean, it's like climate change. It is so big, it is going to take a cataclysm, a holocaust. It is like we don't get the message about the virus until 500,000 people have died. And even then, they don't. So this is just, it is a dead horse.
No, well, I mean, so we could just say our species is going to be dying soon, and we might as well all just go off and have some fun for the last 20 years, right?
That's
I mean,
what's happening anyway. If it takes a 16-year-old girl from Sweden, Greta Thunberg, to tell us that the planet is messed up and we don't even listen to her, they're the next generation. Where are the people? Where is the outrage? It is not there.
Everybody's bought in. Everybody's bought.
They bought into it.
It's I've got to get in my fish sandwich lines to get back in time for my next Zoom. But
Sure.
It's rational ignorance, and it's being
and that on a personal note, like I've made a decision that after March 30th or 31st or whatever that last day is, I'm done for a long time. I'm going to focus on, I bought a boat. I'm going to focus on getting my boat fixed up. I'm going to get my retirement going because we kind of been, well, the pandemic. I'm going to blame the pandemic, not this other stuff. But we're ready. We're ready to do some things that are different in our lives. And so I'm giving it my all until then, and then I'm out. So one last shot. I'm going to know, I can die knowing that I did everything I could.
Well, yeah, I'm there, because goodness gracious, there are 3 of us at today's meeting. Where are the others? Why is no one else here?
Well, there's Kenyatta's got a running meeting on Fridays.
I don't think she had that one today though, but she had some other stuff going on. I can't remember.
I mean, I'm just being realistic here. This state is so corrupt. It's been found to be one of the most corrupt legislatures in the country, and this was done by Harvard. You've seen that study, I'm sure.
Yes, and she knows it too. She mentioned that. So
there's money under the table. The lobbyists are paying people off right and left. You're going to have to really nail some people with some emails or some telephone conversations before you get another Bop Trot. This thing is so twisted and so corrupt, and the teachers don't give a shit. That's 2 strikes against you.
They don't know where to give a shit.
They have been told for the past 8 years, Greg, there has been an Emmy-nominated documentary. The money is so big in those pensions, they can't
I'm just telling you the reality of my building. I feel like I got to start with 101, 100 for, and that's
Yeah. And then they get distracted easily. So, you know, keeping everyone's attention. All right. Well, I'm going to
I'd
put
start with your
Nicole.
vote now, Gay. I
Huh?
think the game's, I think the hand's been played. I don't think Bashir's veto is going to amount to crap. I think they're going to overrun it and override him. We got vouchers and we got a kneecapped pension because we don't have any kind of an association. And all the teachers are bowing and scraping down to the association. And it's been corrupt for 15 years. And that's what Steve Neal has been intimating recently in some of his posts.
Yep.
You know, and what you need to do is maybe you don't need to do a damn thing. If you can ever get him to talk off the record, because he's been saying things like, oh, I've got some stuff I could tell you, or you don't know half the story, or, you know, I don't know if you've noticed those posts, but they've been on your site
He did talk
from,
with me. He talked with me for 3 hours a couple of years ago.
well, things have probably been updated since 3 years ago. He's
Yeah.
kind of coming out of his shell recently. I don't know what the heck he knows, but I know he knows a lot. And what good is it going to do us? I don't know, because the power is so concentrated these days in these ignoramuses in Frankfurt. And once again, the teachers don't give a shit. I'm sorry to put it like that, but I've looked at this long enough, and they get what they get.
I
If
know.
they want to step in front of a bus to figure out that they shouldn't step in front of a bus, maybe they need to step in front of a bus.
Maybe. But see,
You
the
know,
thing, they're throwing their kids under the bus. It's not, it's the kids that suffer at the end of the day.
there
It's
are
the,
kids in Syria that are suffering more. There are kids in Uganda that are dying of tsetse fly disease. Yeah,
get them.
you
Let's
know,
go with them instead.
no, I'm just saying the realism is starting to strike home here that this whole state is twisted over the barrel of corruption and the money is flowing back and forth.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is, you know, this is recorded. Don't put this up on Facebook.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, I've been out there, I've been tooting my horn for